I keep doing it too fast because it's long. I have been reading and listening, as you know, to experts and other friends. We should be experts, parenthetically, of ourselves, but those people are rare. Our society has no interest in this expertise except for the marketable kind, which, you guessed it, is as real as the arguments against method acting. In my listenings and readings, there are 3 grey areas, if not black holes. There are more, but I am not wise enough to encounter more than 3 today. First, Western leaders' support of genocide, which is what we have encountered. There is no wiggle room on this. Hamases grow on trees. You should know this. The colonial powers have dealt with them, since Rome at least, probably Alexander, though he committed a kind of treason, Alexander did. He was influenced by those he conquered. He left a fusion at death. What a possibility. But later, the Northern Euros were biblically proof against such decadence, except for the odd Fletcher Christian. Colonial powers have always done this to the colonized. Butchered first, then reprised against the reprisal. In a way, it is the one justifiable homicide after all the unjustifiable homicide. Today, a friend posted a question about how we are dealing with immigrants, what the Constitution says about them. Most of the responses begin with, well, in our country, but it's not your country. You were and are now descendants of illegal immigrants. Europe might have legalized, Europe's church might have legalized it by papal bull and a discovery doctrine, both obscenities, but not the inhabitants of the Americas who were here when you arrived. It was not a land without a people. I did not bother responding to my friend's post. I know those guys, but it doesn't matter a whit. Their need of a legitimate United States back then, legitimizing their present one, is just sad. And we know denial hurts. The Western leaders' justifying of genocide allows them to fantasize a past, a good and holy Frenchman, a lovely Spaniard, a gorgeous Englishman, who walked the earth sowing goodwill, apple seeds, and peace, with the church as backup for the undeniable butcheries. Gaza has blown the cover. Me and the millions have lost all respect. Y'all just look really bad. The great irony here is that in the American case, the original peoples are the Jews of their myth. I don't buy it, but there it is in Deuteronomy, promised land, sacred homeland. I live in New Jersey, original inhabitants, sacred homeland of the Lenape. If they show up with the Balfour Declaration, I, myself, would probably say, okay, fair price for my condo, a resettlement, and I'll be fine. My neighbors, very unlikely. Or I might sit in council with the Lenape elders and work out a deal, a fusion of our respective gods, arrangements, checks, balances, a commitment to joint rule, parenthesis, none of which, by the way, happened. None of which even shade the pristine white pages of our Constitution. It is a document rooted in and written for a monoculture. Come on, don't be stupid. The rights endowed by a creator about notions of private property peculiar to white European men. They do the checking and the balancing without their checking any checks at all. End parenthesis. Have we changed since? Oh, yes. But the Constitution, hasn't. Though its original writers suggested privately they should make it easy to change, but they didn't. It hasn't essentially changed. There are the amendments, but they're very, very hard to get through, and they need like another 20. They are at best torn, at worst liars, the original founders, or just both. I've done the confetti drop of denial, so you don't get to. You needn't. Genocidal colonialism is in our blood, tradition, and religion. To call it evil in Israel would be an admission we are too weak to sustain. And add, the old empires, often used as justification, conquest is human nature, blah, blah, were not burdened with the contradiction of Jesus. His influence obviously had no impact on gold, lust, rape, pillage, theft, and genocide. So the Christian monotheist project is to revise that history, to make good of atrocity. This is going on today, every day, in our media and group think tanks. This has been the preoccupation of our culture ever since the Crusades at least, and into the future. At this, we are more successful than even warming the globe or making bombs. Quick ad. Just saw David Schwimmer on an extraordinary Zionist podcast making a speech about the courage of the people, our people, supporting Israel in the current, quote, war. As if this point of view was being repressed in the USA. I can imagine why he'd imagine this. I just can't imagine being him. This is from another day, for another day, but why does he imagine the Aryans did what they did in their day? It is understandable you make this ghoulish mistake, raised in a culture that has presumed an exceptionalism, specialness, and superiority for centuries, a presumption that is at the core of the Holocaust. You're not special, though. Adopting the narrative of white Christian Europe while they desperately try to adopt yours is just sick. I feel a faint storybook admiration, as I did with the Fiddler on the Roof story, that a real Tevye would never have forgiven his daughter for marrying the Pole, but there are levels of human development that monotheism just doesn't allow. There are even stories of sitting down at last with the enemy of your ancestors and reaching across the table. Oh, John Kennedy. Flawed argument of the day. 2, related to the above, intersectional, fascism. Fascism is an essential possibility in democracies. It happens a lot. The left makes populism and fascism as synonymous as their wee spirits can. The antonym of populism is tiresomely elitism. Pointing at the usuals, Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, as the leaders of the first rank, ignores always the elites that surrounded them. The ones who surround and grind on Putin. To acknowledge this would start to look too much like how our system actually works, so we stick with the terrible Jefe and his gullible followers' story. US fascism has been with us a long time. Trump is the symptom, not the cause, the figure who arrives so blatantly that even the myopic ruling class can see him. Biden and Harris, Cory Booker, articulate exactly the same notion of exceptionalism at the root of fascism. Europe and the USA have rumbled along for centuries, looking like what our dire bovine media might call democracy, but once their supremacy is challenged, hello Hitler. We all accept pretty consistently that the Reich rose out of the humiliation of the Versailles Treaty. I would say that the relentless, humiliating nature of Western culture its participants must undergo found its last straw in Versailles. Europe and the US have been rumbled, and they are humiliated. Trumpism has occurred. Make America great again. Ignore the humiliation. When populations find themselves in need of something that defines them in defense against this humiliation, its individual members, you are in trouble. He is only visible because the fascism of US hegemony has been dented. Schwimmer-like, the media will talk about plane crashes in terms of Americans who die. The Constitution applies to Americans, not to people. There is a difference, you see, you must see. The incriminating nature of this overly revered mediocre piece of writing. It is true, too, that books of law should be dull, but its original intent needs looking at. We treat it with an inane reverence. It is the good book of both parties, interpreted like all the good ones, variously, a coat of many colours. The founders naturally imagined and wrote on a monoculture model. The Con is written to maintain this culture, allowing nothing else. Monoculture was the goal of Nazism. So is Zionism as it manifests in a homeland. So is MAGA. It is true, but the roots are deeper and uglier even than Trump. Flaw number 3, again, intersectionality. Inequality. We are devoted to inequality. We have decided that this vast resource inequality is natural, is deserved. We only inevitably point and say it's not working very well because we're still going to have people dying in the streets. That's true. But we still revere it. We still believe in it. We attach our craven need for status to our salaries. More on this one. That's enough.